Six Music's album of the day today is Cake and Pressure Chief here, and you'll be hearing tracks from that throughout the rest of the day on the station. We brought him in early because frankly it's not often you manage to get hold of Paul Westerberg. So hey, how are you, Paul? First off,
I'm disappointed that I'm early. I thought I was a full hour late.
You wanted? Is this something you strive for in your?
No, actually I'm quite punctual. I just a little mix up, but here I am.
Yeah. So, over in the UK, for what in any other language would be a mugging, a hit and run. You're in, you're out again. You're just nipping in, doing this one gig tonight at the Scala in King's Cross. When's the last time you played in the UK?
Wow, we were trying to figure it out 13 or 11 years ago.
Oh man!
I mean, actual gig, yeah.
Why the length of why the break?
Nobody wanted to see me?
Oh, come on.
I don't know.
Because, I mean, one of the things, since we've been doing the station here, and it's difficult to describe Six Music sort of in American terms, other than to say sort of a bit like a state-funded college rock station, really.
Yeah.
But sort of replacements of Westerberg fans constantly emailing in, you say, play this, play that, when's it coming, when's it coming? A kind of a general backing noise of your fan base have always been in touch with us. What do you feel you inspire? Such devotion.
I think the generation must have changed. Where once we were the hip young things, and then that was all over with, and it took another 10 years for us to be recognized. So a lot of the groups that to my ear sound like us have no idea who we are. They got second, third hand through, name the groups.
Yeah.
But I don't know why they latched on to us. Honesty, I suppose.
So, and that is something you said at that moment when yourself and the replacements, the hip young things, appearing on Saturday Night Live,
right,
and doing the whole treble. When you're in that phase of your career, is there an awareness that you're going through it? Are you enjoying it as you go, or is it just work?
Absolutely, yeah. You have no idea. The worst part is you have no idea when you're on the way down. 2 years later, you realize, man, that was our peak. No. People would say to you, do you know what this means to be on the cover of, the New York Times or whatever? And it didn't mean anything to us,
So, coming from, were you all from Minneapolis?
Yes.
Yes. Was when you started, were you just kind of like all the other local bands, just trying to crack the scene? And
yeah, we were. There was a scene there that didn't embrace us. We almost were outsiders amongst the outsiders, and it was a national scene that picked up on us first, I think.
And how does that happen? I was just wondering what the process was in America, because here in this country, which would fit snugly snap in the middle of Texas, obviously there's you've got Manchester's got a huge scene, Liverpool, Newcastle, Scotland's got its own thing going out there with Glasgow and Edinburgh. In the West Country, the Bristol Sound, the South Coast has got a thing going. That's all in a tiny little island. But when you break out of Minneapolis, you've got a whole continent to think about. Is that quite a daunting thought for a young band?
It is, but it's good also that by the time you make it to New York or Los Angeles, you've been hopefully playing for 5 or 6 years at home, where honing your chops and dodging beer bottles, and you're good at it by the time you get to the coast.
Is that a key thing? I've asked bands this before, and they're kind of evenly split down the middle. When you get to LA, the LAs and the New Yorks, when you get to the edges of America, the fringes, is that when you feel, now we've arrived? The moment when you first step on a stage in New York, is there a special free song running through the veins?
I remember being disappointed after New York, because I thought every city was like New York. We went to Philadelphia next, or D.C., and I thought there was like 1,000 New Yorks out there. That's how naive we were. But yeah, it was pretty exciting back then. We were highly touted, and I think we played terrible back then, but that's how the word got around. This band that's so horrible. And
hey, come on, it worked for the Faces. Don't muck around, my friend.
Yeah.
So I handed you, and it's always a tense moment, I handed you a copy of All or Nothing, All for Nothing, rather, the compilation, the best of the 2 CD set that was put out of the replacements, a look back and asked you to pick a track, I felt awful doing that, but what was it like looking down the list of what must look like a couple of old set lists?
Well, my eyesight's so poor I couldn't see. I could manage out Skyway and The Ledge, maybe.
You plucked one out of the air, and you chose Can't Hardly Wait. Any particular reason?
That's always been a fan favorite, at least back at home, and it's something I can still play and half-assed remember.
There we go. Simply because the memory's still there for it. This is a replacement, and Can't Hardly Wait. From the album Foker on the Vagrant label here in the UK through Vital, Paul Westerberg there, and a track called My Dad, which is it's achingly personal stuff, Paul. To hear the lyrics there, in particular talking about your father, who a lot of people won't know. He never actually saw you play, did he? Never saw you play live.
No, he never did, and I loved him for it because I took it as a sign that he accepted me as his son, and whether I was a thief or a priest or a surgeon, it didn't matter to him. You know, so he was one of, I think, the only one in the family who never went to see us play, or myself. So I liked it. It made me feel like I was his son.
It's kind of weird, and you're kind of on record as saying that when you yourself became a parent, your relationship with him changed a little. You kind of got a little bit of a sense of what you put him through your life. Did that?
Yeah.
Was that an important thing for your relationship?
I think so. I think it made me realize how much he had to put up with me and my brother and sisters, and he even before he died, he said, "Don't let your family down like I did." And I wanted to I was speechless, because it's like, to me, he didn't. He was fine. He didn't, necessarily take us to Cub Scouts or whatever, but, he was what he was. He drank his beer.
As a parent, it's quite subjective. You can always do better. There's always the super dad over the road that's doing amazing things. At bottom, all you have to do is love your kids, I think, really.
Yeah.
It's what's that going? There's the equipment. Has someone got a mobile? I'm pointing at you, young man. The album Foker as well, and a title there, and the song, a nice, a loose kind of folky feel. Is folk music a genre you're comfortable with?
My kind of folk music. I look at it like a folk song doesn't change. Mr. Tambourine Man doesn't change other than the lyrics. It's the same melody. Each verse is different. They don't add strings. They don't bring in guitars. That is what this record is like. It's folk songs with sort of a rock and roll backing, and sort of folker. I don't know. It's always what I felt. It's like, give the barest bones dressing to the tune and see if it holds up.
Yeah. You mentioned folk when you was talking between the records. You mentioned the Rolling Stones. You used to listen to them. You still listen to them at home. Were you kind of inspired by that whole kind of British boom of the mid-1960s? Was it British music rather than American music that got you into music in the first place?
Well, I had a sister 10 years older than I, who was, say, 14 then in '64. So I got the A stuff through her. I mean, be it Jimi Hendrix or all the Motown stuff, and Beatles and the Stones. So I was split between like Wilson Pickett and the Rolling Stones. And once it was my turn to choose it, then it went to Slade and T-Rex and down the toilet. But
Who did nothing in America, those bands as well, Slade and T-Rex.
I know, and I loved them. I had a hard time finding, pals who,
It's interesting because there's lots of British musicians of the 60s and 70s always used to import stuff from chess records, like Mick Jagger and Keith Richards talking about that, and you were saying you were trying to get hold of British records of the early 70s, which was pop music for us in the UK, but for you was quite avant-garde.
It was different, yeah. I mean, we had nothing really in comparison. Bowie and everything. It was also exotic. We had Alice Cooper or something, which was good songs, but I never really bought into it, and it is funny that way that we steal from each other.
You've picked a Ramones track to play here now, Paul.
Yeah.
Judy is a Punk.